Hello everyone, Mr. Hine here. We're looking at the first lesson of this curriculum of AP Computer Science Principles. All right, and I know some of you in here have some coding background and some of you don't. So don't worry if you don't have any coding background. We'll be going at a pace that it might feel a little fast in the beginning, but don't worry, I'm here to help you if you ever need it. Reach out to me and just keep at it. You'll get a hang of it soon. It's just a little tweak in the brain we have to use when we approach coding, in my opinion. So few things in this lesson I just want to talk about, and we can't do this first part because we're not in class, and we can't do that. Now, you are going to jump right into coding in this curriculum, and we're going to be doing a lot of coding in what's called the trtl module. Now, what is a module in Python? Because we're coding in Python, and if anyone asks, if like a parent asks, we are coding in Python. So I'm going to put it down here, put it as a comment. We're coding in Python 3.7.4. That's the version we're using. All right? And we'll be using this IDE here called trinket.io. And this is an online, lack of a better word, because I could use the word IDE, like a development environment, which is the proper word for it. But think about more so just like a program we use to write code that our computers can run. And typically, you'd have a stronger program that is, downloaded onto the computer. Like this curriculum actually has one, but I don't know if we're going to be able to use it if we're allowed to use Chromebooks or the school computers that are a little bit stronger. But usually you have an IDE, and there's a lot of names of them. There's PyCharm, Visual Studio Code, a few others. I don't want to overwhelm you, but that's where you actually do coding. Now, for our purposes, we're going to be coding in an online browser, meaning as long as you have internet, you can code in this environment. And it's called trinket.io, and you can always go full screen here, which is what I'm going to do to show that. Now, when you look at this code, I know you don't see my face anymore. Off on the left here, this is where you actually write your code. This is called the code editor. And on the right here, if we run this code, as is. Up here is your GUI, your graphical user interface. This is what's showing, and down here is the text of what's showing, because sometimes we write codes that are more text-based and running rather than a visual representation of it. Now, when I said that there's a trtl module, that's called trtl. What that means is a module, and this, when I do a hashtag like that, that's a comment. It's green. It means this does not affect the code. It's like extra writing you're allowed to do. So the trtl module, think of it as like it's an entire code that they titled trtl, trtl, and it would take up like more than the page you see here that already has objects and methods that we can use. So we don't have to recreate them. It's basically like someone else is already creating a lot of code, and we can just use their code to do what we want to do. And there's so many modules out there. In fact, you could probably create your own module by the end of this class that you can use to help you. All right. Now, a little bit more about that. So they imported this module, and instead of typing trtl, they said, let's call it trtl because that's more recognizable. Now, in this module, notice how it's this first line here, and I don't know if you're familiar with this. They're saying painter equals trtl.trtl, open parentheses mark. Now, a few things that are happening here. What's happening here is that when you use the equal sign, that is defining what we call a variable in coding. So in this case, we're calling painter a variable that will take on, whatever this is within the trtl module. So within this module, within this file, trtl, like this entire file, there's something called the trtl object. And what that does is it actually just creates this arrow here. It creates an object. And we're going to call it painter. You could call it anything you want, but that's what we're going to call it. So in this case, painter is our variable. Now, lines 5 and 6 here, it says, okay, take that variable painter, and then it says dot forward. So what happens is that with code in Python, that dot forward, that is called a method. That's called a method. So it's going to take the variable, or even the proper word we can think of it as, or object called painter. So it's going to take that object painter and it's going to move it forward 100 spots and move forward 100, pixels. Truthfully, it's just pixels, I think. And then this one right here is when it's done, is you say write 90, and what's that mean? We're not quite sure. But if we run this code, so stop and run from the beginning, it opens up an object painter, which is that arrow, and it moved it really quickly. And we can adjust that later, and you can see it. And it moved it forward 100 degrees, or 100 pixels, and then it rotated 90 degrees clockwise. You can see that because it originally was facing right, so it rotated 90 degrees clockwise to make it face bottom. And then down here, line 8, WN is short for window. So they're saying, WN is short for window. But again, they're just saying that's a variable. So WN is a variable that is taking on whatever the dot screen does within the turtle module. And what it does here is with that, we have, again, another method where it's w.mainLoop, and mainLoop is just makes this code run. It makes it loop through this code, and what allows us to see this right here. So that's a little bit about how this runs, because I think the jump to this is kind of a lot for the day one. And let me exit out of this and keep going through a few more things in this lesson. So that is a little bit about how to read this code in Python. Okay. Now, when I said that now on this graph, this is the graph you can picture. So every time we talk about coordinates and rotating, it's just your standard XY axis where we start at 0, 0, and it is facing 0 originally. So it's facing, when I say 0, it's facing the positive x-axis normally. That's 0 degrees, right? And clockwise, it moves clockwise naturally, which is actually unnatural to anyone who studies math and is in a high enough math class in LCAP. Yet where math, we actually typically, the default is counterclockwise in math, but in this module, in the turtle module, the default is clockwise. So 90 degrees move it clockwise to its right. All right. And now there's a lot of different methods you can do within this module, and they list some of them there. So there's different things you can do to your object, which they called painter. You can move it forward, where it's going to take an input, and they just call this d, and that's a distance of d pixels. I was right with pixels. And then there's the backwards method. I'll move it backwards, right, left, circle. And there's so much. In fact, if you want to look it up, just Google the trtl module. And if you look it up, whoa, travel accessories. Let's do TRT module Python to make sure they know it's code we're looking at. All right, and it's a docs.python.org. All right. And what it shows here is this is a module, and these are all the different things that you can do within this module. So someone created this file, called it trtl, the turtle, and there's all these things that people have already programmed that you can use, where instead of having to teach something how to have a speed, you can just use their speed method. Instead of teaching something to go have a position, you can just use their position method and all of this. And if you click on it, it talks about how it works. So notice if I was to go to one that we saw already, which we have used, what did we use so far? And this is the actual documentation. This is what anyone using this would go to. Oh, forward. Notice it says turtle.forward distance, where distance is your input. And it takes an input and moves it forward by that number, an integer or a float. A float is just a decimal in coding. Right? And they can see turtle.forward 25. I don't think this does a good enough explanation here. It's nice to have a visual with it. But this right here is what I want you to focus on, where it tells you what your input is and what it does there. Okay. So if I was to mess around with this a little bit just to show you, all right, so one of the things you can do is painter.turtle size. So say if I don't have anything there originally, what's it look like? All right. As an object, it's just an arrow there. Okay. See if I can make this bigger for you. All right. And if I want to make the turtle size bigger, say 3. Now notice that it has, a bigger object. And there's all sorts of methods. So say I want it to go to a spot. So So I'm going to say, okay, take my object painter, use the method goTo, and how does goTo work? It says goTo and you pick an XY location. And remember, XY is just a graph like this. So say I want it to go to like 50-50, go 50 pixels to the right and 50 pixels up. Run that code. Notice, there it goes, 50-50. And there's a lot of other things you can do. I could even change the color of the pen. So I could say, okay, let's go to 50-50, and then let's change the color of the painter. What's the method called? Pen color. And now what's the input C take? It says it takes the input as what we call a string of any color, red, blue, or yellow. So let's change it to red. I wonder if I have to put it in quotations like they did. And then once it's red, let's have it go to -100, 50. Let's see if this works. There you go, it went 50, then it changed red, and then it went to -150. So there's a lot you can do within this module, but that's understanding Python and objects and methods and this module turtle, because I do think it kind of just jumps right into it, and I don't know how comfortable you are with making sense of it. If you have any questions, make sure you email me, come to office hours, or ask me if you're coming in person when you can. All right, hope that helps. Bye-bye.